In my last video, I showed the ice world that I've recently added to Breezy. Well, I'm pleased to announce that I've finished the ice world. I've actually made some more progress on top of that. In this video, I'll go over what I've added to Breezy since the last video. As I mentioned, I've wrapped up the ice world that I showed off in the previous video. I ended up making this world in a much shorter period of time than the grass or beach worlds. In some of the later levels, I added falling icicles that tilt as the player slides under them, blocking the path of slower players. These icicles are a sort of double-edged sword though, since they can destroy ice structures coming up from the ground. I use these to create puzzle levels and as incentives for time-based challenges. Finally, the last level of the ice world is a difficult race that requires you to keep your momentum throughout multiple loops. The ice world may just be the most fun course I've created so far, but that isn't the only course that I've been working on. After wrapping up the ice course, I began the fourth world in Breezy, themed after a city. As usual, I drew up some ideas in OneNote. You can see some buildings scattered around each level, along with some buttons that activate elements across the level. For the most part, those designs carried over. The city world is seemingly the simplest yet. I don't have to do anything with the terrain since it's all flat. Instead, I just place these buildings around the level if I need an elevation change. I created 4 colors of buildings, each with a different shape. Blue for these tall ones, red for these short ones, green for these flat buildings, and yellow for these wall-type buildings. Besides the buildings, I also had to add a unique gameplay mechanic or two. For the city world, I chose buttons and elevators. Let's start with the buttons. You touch them, they change color, they do something. That's all of it. I did actually create an interesting system for activating or deactivating game objects, though. All I have to do is tell each button which object it's connected to. Then when the scene starts, the button detects whether or not it's active. If the game object is inactive, the button activates, and vice versa. This makes it quicker to wire up level design. Next, the elevators. The elevators are just featureless cubes right now, though I could, and probably should, change that in the future. Elevators use a similarly modular system to the buttons. I simply pass it a list of points, and the elevator automatically travels between those points at a set speed. There are also these blue elevators that don't activate until the player touches them. They also stop at their last point instead of looping, which often turns them into setbacks and makes tricky situations where you have one chance to get your timing right. When combining these with the buttons, I've been able to come up with a multitude of interesting level design. Finally, there's the music. The ice world is fast-paced and exciting, so I wanted something a little more relaxed and calm. I settled on a blues vibe this time, and a blues song is only as good as its bass. And the organ riffs. And the piano chords. And finally, the melody. As usual, I will post a full song soon. Between all the level design I've been doing, I managed to work on some UI code as well. UI has never been my favorite and probably never will be, but at best it can be at least a little fun. Anyway, I decided to add some icons at the bottom of the screen that showed your progress in the course. You could tell at a glance how far along you were. I started by creating the icon in GIMP, along with a version containing a flag to signify levels you've beaten. I then inserted 18 of these icons onto a canvas, and added a script that changes their icon to match whether you've beaten the level. The icon for the level you're currently on also turns yellow. If you're playing Remix Rush, I made the icons pink and had the flags go up based on how far you are in the run. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, Teleportation. Specifically, I've added a new unlockable character to Breezy, the Dash Ball. You'll notice these blue sparks in this special blue trail. When you see these, you can press the hit button again in midair to dash in any direction. Sound overpowered? You're right, which is why I gave it a trade-off. The dash ball stops once it hits the ground instead of bouncing and rolling like the other characters. The other 2 unlockable characters act as easy modes since they're easier to control with more margin for error. With the dash ball, your margin of error is reduced to near 0. So far though, I've been able to beat just about every level with it, though it took some creative solutions. Finally, there's one more bonus feature that I spent a day on, the replay system. I haven't added any UI for it, but if you press the rewind button after finishing a level, you can watch a replay of it. It's not perfect since Unity's physics system is non-deterministic, meaning the same inputs don't always give the same simulation, but I added some workarounds to fix this. While the level is being played, I record the position and rotation of the ball, along with the direction of the wind. Then for the replay, I just manually move the ball and apply the same wind. Since the ball's collider is still active, all the collisions happen as usual if everything goes right. I'd like to use this feature to create a highlight reel of your run after a game of Remix Rush, maybe throwing in some cool slow-mo shots. Speaking of things I'd like to do, I'm almost done with the city course, but I'd like the last level to be something special. I'm thinking of a boss fight. No spoilers yet, but it should be pretty neat. I'll make sure to show that in the next devlog. Beyond that, the last 2 courses of the game are all that I have left, at least for the main content. I'm not thinking about the side content too much yet, except for these unlockable characters. If I think of something neat to add that wouldn't take up too much time, I'll consider adding it as side content. Anyway, that's all for this devlog. I don't normally mention subscribing to the channel, but that's because 99.9% of my audience is already subscribed. It does seem like we have one person missing though, so if that's you, you know what to do. And that is, have a good day.